Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 35th edition of the International Documentary Film Festival here in Munich, to our special edition DOK.fest at Home, to the Best of Fest section, where we will screen the film Midnight Family. This time we'll do this in cooperation with our partner Instituto Cervantes, whose director is here, and I want to welcome very warmly Felipe Santos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for collaborating. And now I want to say hello to the director of the film, Lorentzen, in San Francisco. Hi, Luke.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for your film. I think Felipe will start.
Hi, Luke. I hope everything is going well in San Francisco with this corona crisis, and you and your family stay safe. So I think probably it's going all well. So the first question is clear. How did you start the project? Because I can imagine the whole process and the huge work that is inside this film. And when did you realize that you had a story? What is the very moment you realize of that?
So I moved to Mexico City at the end of 2015, and I went there really on a whim. I had a really close friend who lived there and grew up there, and I really went to visit him, and I had an idea for a short film that I started to work on, and it wasn't really coming together. But one morning I woke up and just parked in front of the apartment that I was staying in was this ambulance, and I kind of looked inside and could tell that it was a family business, which intrigued me, and I stopped and I just started chatting with them, and they were quick to invite me on a night of work, and I took them up on that offer, got in the ambulance, and what I saw in that first night was just mind-blowing. Kind of the whole range of human emotions were unfolding in this one ambulance, and I saw a family that needed to put food on their table, and I saw patients that were left behind by a dysfunctional government healthcare system, and the ethical questions that kind of came up really fascinated me. I kind of felt that I had a story to tell from that very first night.
Yeah. Was it hard, one thing is to go and have drive around with them. The other thing is to make a film, right? And so how was it for them when it came down to terms to, I would like to film you in every kind of situation. And how was it from the authorities? Did you also have to bribe the police, or how was it technically to do this film?
So, it's a process, and I shot with the Ochoa family for over the course of 3 years, and I didn't show up and say, we're going to make a film together that's going to take 3 years. I showed up and asked them if I could come for one night of filming, and then after that night I asked if I could come back for another night, and over time we built a relationship together. And I think one of my big takeaways from this film in the process of it was that more than cameras and microphones and really even storytelling, what my job was trust building and building this relationship that the whole film relied on. And that's part of the reason that it took so long, is the family wasn't gonna just let all of the walls kind of come down in the matter of weeks. It took time for us to really trust each other. In terms of the authorities, there were certain police officers that I got to know really well, and who, like the Ochoa family, started to kind of let me in on part of their work, and others that didn't. And that was just the process of navigating. But I didn't bribe or need to bribe any police officers to make the film. I just needed to kind of find the ones that were willing to share their story. For better or worse, I wasn't revealing much new information in terms of how corrupt Mexico City police officers are. It's something that anybody who lives in Mexico City kind of knows about and confronts, on a daily basis. And so it was sometimes a matter of, taking out the identity of the police officer, but still being able to kind of tell that story.
Mm-hmm. And look, how were your experience in the filming process inside the van, inside the ambulance? Because I'm thinking in a kind of parallel odyssey as the character of the film, as you as a filmmaker, and have a parallel process of experiences. How were there?
It was really a whole range of things. On one hand, probably and hopefully some of the most difficult moments that I'll kind of ever experience, people on the brink of life, who are, having these life-changing experiences, and being there for those night after night, it affects you, it gets under your skin and changes the way that you think about the world. And the moment that you think you've kind of seen it all, something will happen that kind of ruins that whole sense of knowing how the system works or knowing how accidents work. I had the luxury of taking a break. I'd shoot for 2 or 3 weeks, and then I could take a couple months off to look through the footage and think about the film. But the Ochoa family, they're working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, responding to accidents. And I think I built up an enormous amount of respect for people that are in this work, and especially today with the situation that our world is in. First responders are true kind of heroes, and are the ones showing up when no one else is.
Do you think, did you come to terms with thinking about the parallels between being a documentary filmmaker and a first responder? There are several things that are similar. Now the things I read about you're like a filmmaking nomad between LA, Mexico, Italy. So it's somebody like a drifter going around looking for the story, condensing the story, getting it always in the kind of metaphor between life and death or something. So how close did you come feeling the similarity maybe from being a filmmaker to those Nighthawks like the Ochoa family? Was that a theme for you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the idea. I think on just the surface level, I think the biggest comparison that I felt was this need to find comfort in dealing with strangers. I think the Ochoa family, on every night, they are confronting families and needing to get those families to trust them, and that's kind of how they make a living, is driving around the city dealing with people that they don't know. And I think maybe there's a similarity there in terms of what I do of walking through a city or going to a new country and trying to build trust with people that have never met me. But I also think what's kind of cool about the process of Midnight Family is that we are extremely different people and come from different sides of the world. And the process of making the film was bridging that divide and coming up with ways to connect and tell the story despite coming from extremely different places. The Ochoa family growing up in, a rather poor part of Mexico City, and I, growing up in just outside New York City. It's very different worlds.
Look, I would like to point out something about the process of editing, because you made the edit also, and how long it took. How many decisions you had to take before this process, and how was the result?
Yeah, it's a good question. Documentaries are really kind of made in the edit. It's where the story is found. It's where the nuance and the kind of form of the project really comes to life. With Midnight Family, it was a long process. I was editing as I was shooting for the 3 years that I've been referencing, and we had a locked cut of the film at the end of 2017 that we thought was done, and we submitted it to Sundance and got rejected, and had to make this decision of, do we kind of go submit to other festivals and kind of call the film done, or do we kind of take this as a sign that maybe there's more of a story to tell, and decided to go back to Mexico City for another shoot. And in that kind of last final 2.5 week shoot, shot maybe 80% of what you see in the film, despite having spent 60 to 70 nights in the ambulance prior to that. And I remember just on the flight home from that last shoot back to the US, on a note card, I structured out the whole film, and I knew that I had the kind of 6 accidents that were going to make the journey of the film work. And so there was this need for me to kind of shoot and edit and shoot and edit and really figure out exactly what the film needed to be. So on that last shoot, I was just kind of there ready for those moments, and thinking actively behind the camera about each shot that the film kind of needed. So sometimes editing and shooting can be restricting. It can kind of keep you from seeing the film with fresh eyes. It can keep you from kind of coming to the material with a certain energy that the audience will have. But with this film, there was something important about shooting it and editing and just kind of having that clarity of what was needed, and to know that I needed to push forward to get to that final step.
So for you then, I mean, I also read you worked as a producer for the Netflix series Last Chance U. So it's also about documentary filmmaking, but I reckon, so there is the biggest diversity or the biggest anti-points comparing these two kinds of working, your work in Midnight Family and the work you as a producer for a documentary series at Netflix. How do you cope with that?
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, Midnight Family was really made with I shot it and edited it, and I had a really great producer who was involved, and then a small team of producers in Mexico City. Last Chance U, we have on some days 32 people just in production and another 30 in post-production. It's huge, and they're just different forms of working. I truly don't think one is better than the other. I think certain stories call for certain types of filmmaking, and sometimes a big crew lets you achieve things visually that are mesmerizing, and sometimes it can keep you from getting anything intimate. And I think working in both styles is just kind of developing my toolkit of what I'm capable of doing when the story calls for it. And I think Midnight Family was like writing a novel. It was me very much without the chaos of people or financing, just thinking about storytelling and one-on-one connection. And Last Chance U is its own beast. So yeah, it's fun to try new things. With my next project, I'm trying to do a little bit of both to kind of keep the intimacy of Midnight Family while not limiting, what is possible in terms of the images and kind of scale of things that I want audiences to feel.
And to continue with your career as a filmmaker, Luke, what's next? Are you working on anything new now, or?
I am, yeah. I'm working on 2 projects. One is international, and so it's kind of up in the air when or how that will unfold. We were going to do our first kind of scout shoot in March, and I think it's realistic to think that it's been pushed about a year. We'll see. And the other one here is local in San Francisco, and I'm hoping will be something that I can start shooting soon. They just extended the lockdown till June 1st. So if things open in June, which I don't know if they will, I can kind of start working on that. But again, the one here local is a 1-person project, and the international one is going to be a bigger team. So trying to keep working in both ways.
Yeah, great. One last question regarding the film. There is this really heartbreaking scene with this mother. And did she see the film? And how did she react? And did she say yes to being in the film, to remaining in the film?
So that scene that comes at the end of the film, and it was something that I shot in the first week of being in the ambulance. It was a scene that I shot rather without really being prepared for it. I had at the time just one camera mounted on the hood of the ambulance, and I wasn't filming in the back of the ambulance precisely to not film patients and to not film family members. I was just going to be filming the father and son driving as I kind of learned what it was like to be in this ambulance. And the mother got in, and that scene was filmed. The camera was rolling, and I felt really uncomfortable and quite guilty with how it had unfolded. And I almost deleted the footage the next day, but I saved it and eventually showed it to an old film professor of mine who encouraged me to try and find that mother. And so 6 months after the accident, I went and knocked on her door. I had her address from the emergency call, and she let me in, and we spent about 2 hours talking about the film, about her daughter, Sonia, who had been studying journalism, and she wanted to give me the permission to use it as a story that she thought Sonia would have been interested in. And it was kind of the beginning of me discovering that despite these moments being kind of these life-changing, gut-wrenching moments, there were people out there still eager to share them. And I found that, you know, a much larger percentage of people than I expected were still willing to let their life be part of the process and part of the film. And that often came down to how I approached it and how I kind of talked about it. But it was a really important part of the process of making the film, was learning that people do, you know, often want to share despite that process being difficult.
And are you in contact with them? And how are they doing, the Familia Ochoa, with this corona crisis? I can imagine.
Yeah,
I cannot imagine the situation now.
It's I am definitely in contact with them, and they're doing well. I think Mexico is about to hit its peak. It has not, and in some ways their work has, at least in the beginning of the virus, their work had really slowed down. Just the city locking down meant there were less accidents, and less work. I mean, you know, in a country like Mexico where 60% of the economy makes a living in some sort of informal work, when that comes to a halt, it means a really different thing. A lot of, you know, the Ochoa families often making in one day what they're buying dinner with and what they're, you know, staying alive with. And so there was a moment where it was kind of hard to know how it was going to impact them. And I think since then things have gotten busier, for better or worse, but they're, you know, definitely on the front lines of this. And I think the way that the Mexico City government and Mexico's government as a whole has been handling it has been, you know, far from perfect, unfortunately. But
well, Luke, well then thank you very much for this nice chat. No?
Last question?
Last question, of course. Yeah, sure.
A very short
Sorry.
question, Luke, because I was thinking, because at the end of the film, I saw that this film is in memoriam of Sonia Aguilar.
mm-hmm.
Who is she?
She is, well, I think if you watch the film, you'll know.
Okay.
And without kind of giving away what kind of happens at the end of the film, but she's somebody that is kind of in the film, and from that conversation that we kind of referenced with that mother, I kind of wanted to reference. Yeah, I'm glad that you noticed that. It was kind of an important part of the credits for us. I'm not saying just as a kind of a spoiler alert. I think.
No, of course not.
Of course not.
Of course. But did the mother see the film?
She asked not to, and that was something that we talked a lot about, and so she knows what the scene is and knows kind of how it fits in the film, but didn't want to see it.
It's very brave. It's a very brave scene. Very, very impressive. Yeah. Right. Well, Luke, then we wish you all the best for the next, for both of the project, the big one and the intimate small one. Yeah. And well, stay healthy. Enjoy.
Yeah, you too. Good luck with the festival. I hope you get.
And the festival also, this film is nominated for the Audience Award by the Bavarian Public Television and the Dreisat Cultural Program. So to you, dear audience, please vote for the film if you wanted to get an award, of course. And yeah, well, good luck. And we really hope to see you another time in
definitely
physical presence, not only the intellectual and the image present. So thank you very much and see you another time. Thank you, Luis Santos. Thank you, well, and hope the times change.
Yep. Good luck with everything. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Luke.